Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Siegfried Usal, Managing Director of Cortex. Welcome to this second edition of the Thales Media Days, dedicated to AI for Decisive Moments. Bienvenue à ces jours médiatiques ces journées médiatiques de Thales dédiées à l'intelligence artificielle dans les moments critiques. A little bit of housekeeping. I'll ask you to put your phone in silent mode. We'll have live connections with the other sites around the world. We are delighted, actually, to welcome you in this room and all over the globe. We will broadcast through video link as well as YouTube with media from Canada, France, Germany, India, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, United States of America, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. We're so glad to have you all today to discuss this fascinating topic of artificial intelligence here in the Quebec epicenter of artificial intelligence. On the Cortex, which I lead here in Montreal, and where you are today. Cortex is the Thales North America Digital Factory and the the group's artificial intelligence research and technology laboratory. Leveraging and supporting the strength and the combined expertise of Ivado, scientific from the ecosystems of universities, the laboratories. The mission of Cortex is to push and advance safe and ethical applications of AI in our vast product portfolio, which is the airlines. So we're trying to create solutions to help airlines, air traffic controllers, satellite operators, mainline light rails operators, armed forces, and critical infrastructure managers to make the right decision at the decisive moments. In other words, high technology to serve the humans, des hautes technologies au service des femmes et des hommes. Artificial intelligence in decisive moments will be illustrated today in all our industry sectors: aerospace, space, ground transportation, and I forgot, defense security. Together with several experts from Ivado, from University of Laval, Defense Research and Development Canada, the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, the French National Rail Operators, SNCF, Microsoft, we will discuss how to make AI trustable, explainable, and certifiable. This event is yours to discover and to nurture your own knowledge to better grasp what the future is made of for those various industries. I am personally very delighted to kick off that day with one of its kind panel discussion, gathering two great leaders, one from the industry and one from scientific community. Please join me in welcoming on stage Chairman and CEO of Thales, Patrice Caine, and Yoshua Bengio, founders and scientific director of the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms. You're on air to provide us with some opening comments on this topic of AI for decisive moment. The floor is yours.
Bien, bonjour à tous. Je vais commencer en français et basculer en anglais. Juste quelques mots d'ouverture pour vous dire qu'on est très heureux de tous vous accueillir aujourd'hui à Montréal pour ce deuxième Thales Media Day dédié à l'intelligence artificielle. On a depuis 2016 énormément investi sur ces sujets-là. Quand on fait les comptes, c'est à peu près de 7 milliards d'euros que la société a consacré pour recruter de nouveaux talents, pour former les gens, pour acheter des sociétés, lancer des outils assez exceptionnels comme la Digital Factory, sur 4 technologies clés très importantes dans le domaine digital, dont l'intelligence artificielle. Et Montréal est un de ces lieux extrêmement vibrant sur ces domaines de l'intelligence artificielle. On va accentuer nos efforts en matière de R&D, bien sûr, on va continuer, et en particulier ici à Montréal. Ces efforts qui ont commencé il y a plus de 30 ans, alors on en parle de manière plus récente, hein, mais effectivement, le groupe, déjà il y a 30 ans, faisait de la recherche sur cette question de l'intelligence artificielle. Et puis c'est vrai qu'on est très fiers d'avoir avec nous Yoshua, le professeur Bengio, voilà, qui nous fait la gentillesse, l'amabilité de participer à ce panel ce matin. So, welcome to all. I'm so glad to start this day devoted to artificial intelligence. It is of vital importance for Thales. It's one of the 4 key technologies, digital technologies, in which we have invested a lot. Since 2016, the group has invested around 7 billion euros across the globe in its talents by acquiring company through organic investment like the Digital Factory and its instantiation here in Montreal with Cortex. We'll continue this effort. It's far from being over. It's just, in fact, the beginning of the journey in this respect. And I'm very glad to welcome this morning Yoshua, Professor Bengio, one of the most inspiring leader in AI, who will comment, give his views, his thoughts on this topic of AI during this panel.
Okay, so I know that we invested a lot in the past few years. We've been doing in Thales AI for a while, and I know that that perseverance actually is something that Thales and Yoshua are sharing in perseverance actually in working on AI. Yoshua, you've been working for your whole career actually on machine learning, most notably. Can you tell us more why you put so much effort actually in working on machine learning, while it was sometimes a lot of constraint involved?
Well, you know, being a researcher is a job of passion. And when I was starting my master's studies here in McGill University in Montreal, I was looking for different areas, and I started reading neural network papers. And I really got in love with the idea that there could be a few simple principles, like the laws of physics, which could explain intelligence, and so that would explain animal and human intelligence, as well as allow us to build intelligent machines. And basically, I've been with this dream since the last 30 years. And the great news is that it's now the established views in the scientific community about AI, and that it's working. That this exploration for simple, understandable principles is not complete by far, but is making a huge impact in society. And I guess a lot of what I want to talk about here is that this impact can be both positive and negative, and we have to think about both sides.
So AI is not only a buzzword. It's been a buzzword for sure in the media, but here on that stage, we're convinced that AI, it's not only a buzzword. It has a true impact on our life, on our products. Patrice, you mentioned quickly that AI is one of that 4 key technologies that are important for Thales digital transformation. Why AI?
Well, what we call critical decision chain is really at the core of what we do for all our customers, be they defense customers, be they satellite operators, transport operators, airlines. It all comes to gathering data, transmitting data, storing data, processing data. And due to the evolution of the technologies, it has become more and more obvious that the digital technologies, IoT, to connect objects, to find sense in massive amount of data, AI, to give autonomy to systems, sensors, equipments, and also cyber, which guarantee the integrity of data, of the algorithm, of the machines on which you run these algorithms, are clearly key if we want to continue to accompany our customers in their own digital transformation.
Interesting. Sometimes we have the impression that AI could be pervasive, spread across our life on a day-to-day basis. Anything we touch, devices, features, but not only that, actually. I heard sometimes, actually, you referring, actually, to electricity to explain how AI could be deployed at an industrial scale. Will AI be commoditized at one point? Will it take 100 years like electricity did?
So for sure, we are on an exponential growth of the deployment of AI. But AI, as we know it today, is probably different from AI in 5 years or 15 years from now. So it's even hard to forecast how things will grow. But one thing I often say is, even if the scientific progress in AI were to stop today, the principles we have already found are already incredibly useful and will continue to have social and industrial impact for many years and decades. In other words, there's enough that we have found that can fuel an industrial revolution. But more is coming because research in AI is accelerating, actually.
OK, so I see that commoditization of AI could happen, right?
Yes. It's already happening if you look at software, right? So a lot of the major software libraries that are used in academia and industry are open source, even if they come from companies. And researchers are putting out their code for free. Even researchers from companies often putting out open source code. And so the information about algorithms and code to run them is spreading out very, very easily across the globe right now, including in developing countries, by the way, which is great.
So there is a risk associated to commoditization. It can overshadow just because it's convenient. So you don't feel concerned, actually, by it just because it's there, like electricity. What are the risks associated to the commoditization? This commoditization could overshadow, actually, the risk associated to people, to the society, as it could impact, free will, for instance. It could impact the ability to get the informations that you want to and not the one that you're provided. What are the impacts? Is there some risk of that commoditization?
So the democratization of the science and technology and software of AI is great because it allows the powerful, positive outcomes to come even faster and on a larger scale. But the risk is people start using that technology without thinking about the consequences for others and for society. And the bigger picture I'd like to really focus on today, and my main message, is there's a wisdom race going on between the speed of progress of technology on one hand and the rate at which we can get wiser collectively and individually. And it's very, very important to understand that it's a race, because if our wisdom doesn't catch up fast enough with our scientific and technological progress, we'll self-destruct. Think about a world where anybody could throw off thermonuclear weapons and kill 10 million other people. There are enough crazy people and desperate people on this planet that it would be catastrophic, right? So this is an extreme example, but AI could eventually allow these kinds of things, and especially if it's available to everyone. And so I don't think the solution is to put AI in a cage and make everything secret. It's never going to work. Information goes. But we have to work harder on things like international norms, making sure that every human is well-fed, educated, in good health, to minimize those kinds of risks.
So that is interesting. Patrice, I have a question for you. AI can predict and can support decision and sometimes make decision, but we don't know how. it's a black box. That's what we hear, generally speaking. Actually, we hear that it's a black box, actually, and the risk associated, actually, to the usage of AI. Going to the solution, what can Thales do to make those black box less black, up to white, hopefully, but it's certainly actually more transparent?
That's clearly a very key question if we want to continue to use AI more and more extensively in our domain. And it all comes with trust. Let me explain a little bit on this notion of this idea of trust. We need to build trust between companies or labs that do research and provide solutions to the society. The aim, the goal is clearly to improve the world in which we live. At the same time, we need to build trust for the people to believe us that we are doing so for good. So probably four comments in this respect. How can we build trust? For sure, we will need some kind of regulation, laws, rules to set a kind of a framework in terms of governance of the use of data and AI. But it will not be enough. It will not be enough. Companies like Thales, we need also to bring our own, I would say, piece to this trust journey. Hence the concept of explainable AI. As you said, for the moment, it is seen as a black box, especially when you use machine learning or deep learning. So the idea is really to be able to develop a kind of a branch within this AI, I would say, set of technologies. It's not just one technology that would enable us to explain how and why the machine did or recommended what he has done or recommended. That's what I call a posteriori trust, step one. Step two, probably it will be not enough, it's a first step, but it will be not enough, especially in mission critical or safety critical application, where life is at stake. And it's a longer shot, but we need to start now to work on what I call a priori trust, which means how can we certify AI? From explanation to certification, from explainable AI to certifiable AI. It will probably take a bit of time. It's not as easy as it may sound when I just say it, but it's important for a company like Thales to work actively on it, in line with the community, by the way. We'll not find the solution on our own, but it is very important. Last comment is on diversity. Diversity related to the teams who work on AI and on this algorithm. We've often heard about the integrity of the data, or the non-biased, or to make sure that we use non-biased data to get non-biased results, or non-biased decision. Something which is perhaps less well known by the public is that algorithm also may have some unconscious bias. And in particular, if the team, the engineers working on a given algorithm, is not diverse enough, it's more than certain that this algorithm will have some unconscious bias. That's something we have embraced, I would say, a while ago now, to have more diverse team in terms of gender, origin, background, nationality, even sexual orientation, whatever the diversity is. We need to have more and more diverse team to guarantee or to make sure or to minimize the risk of having unconscious biased algorithm.
Yoshua, is that something that you're exploring as well with your institute, making those black box more transparent?
In the long run, yes. So you have to understand that some of the current limitations in interpretability have to do with the fact that the techniques we have correspond in their type of cognitive processing to unconscious computation in your brain. And there are a lot of things that, in fact, most of our intelligence comes from that part of our brain to which we don't have access. So, in fact, humans are not that good at interpreting their own decisions. They make up a story. It's not always good. But at this point, we don't even have the equivalent of machines that can explain, like a human would, their own decisions, which is going to be imperfect, right? Because even humans, as I said, are limited, right? But we don't even have what humans are able to do. And for that, we need to make the junction between this, what we call System 1 unconscious processing that we are good at right now in AI, with the classical AI goals that are closer to System 2, so logical, linguistic type of intelligence. And that's something that's in the research and that many of us are, of course, investigating. We don't know how much time it's going to take, but clearly this is one of the big missing pieces of AI. And I want to add to that current AI systems are really, really stupid, like really, in the sense that they don't understand the world around us. Their understanding of the world is very superficial. So you can see this by looking at the kinds of mistakes they do. And it's very important to understand that when you're an engineer and you're building tools, because you have to realize those limitations and not imagine that the machine is sort of godlike, because it's not. It's not even human-like. And for sure, it doesn't understand human psychology, and it doesn't understand moral questions and values.
So I hear that. So a lot of things being said, since the beginning. Responsible AI. It has impact on society. Actually, we don't know what's inside black box. We are far from delivering on that explanation, that transparency, that trust, that responsibility. A question actually on GAFA, the Google, Amazon, Facebook, and others actually that are leading in as we speak. It's no secret. Patrice, are we competing against those companies in AI? Is that possible to compete against them?
Well, it's a question I often get. That's why I'm smiling. Not really, but I'm going to explain why. First, these companies have made huge investments in these domains, and in particular in AI. And what they have done is really impressive. Looking at their results, it's really impressive. That, by the way, develop quite very simple but extremely powerful business model. They collect your data for free, and they make profit out of it by providing simple but with real added value services. Having said so, they are not addressing what we call mission critical or safety critical worlds. It's a fact. It's not something that is good or bad. It's a fact. And looking at what we do at Thales, it's almost exactly the opposite. We operate in mission and safety critical environments. We serve a highly demanding customer in small numbers, extremely time-consuming customers. We love our customers. And in relatively small market in terms of value. With a high entry barrier in terms of knowledge, in terms of domain knowledge. So it's not only, I would say, a question of mastering AI or mastering data analytics. To serve these customers, you have not only to master the technology, but to master or to fully understand how they operate. And this creates a kind of invisible or implicit entry barrier. So looking at the landscape, so far, they are clearly not in our domain. They are not apparently interested to enter these very specific markets. And most of the time, they are more our partners than competitors. Looking at Microsoft is an important partner of Thales with their solution Azure and Azure Stack for edge computing, which is very important for us, for our sensors. So I would say they are our partners for the moment, but not really our competitors.
Okay, different playground, between Thales and the GAFAs. But the GAFAs are dominating, actually, still AI. And Yoshua, you are a strong advocate of open science, collaborations, and what I'm saying, actually, from your words is against, the centralization of power on AI with the associated risk. And you think, I heard, actually, that you're trying, actually, to alert people and the public, actually, of the risk associated, actually, to that. Do you want to elaborate on the?
Sure, but you said it perfectly fine. So I was talking earlier about the increasing power of technology and especially AI, right? And there's the danger that I mentioned of like misuse by maybe lone organizations, crazy people, or some countries. But there's also the danger of concentration of power and concentration of wealth that goes with it. And concentration of power is bad for democracy, right? I mean, if an organization is very powerful, it starts influencing the governments more than it should. And we enter into something that's bad, not just for the business environment, because if there's a high barrier of entry, it's not good for innovation, but it's bad for society and democracy at large. So what are the solutions to this? I don't know, but I think we have to collectively start discussing maybe in different ways, but with the same ideals that were discussed at the beginning of the 20th century, the question of concentration, monopolies, and maybe revise the antitrust laws and so on that were there to face the current situation of some companies basically dominating completely a particular given market.
All right, still holding on the responsible AI path, and I'm going to read that one because it's a topic that is very touchy. The military applications of AI. Some would argue that there is a high risk that the human become decommissioned against AI. In defense application, your public statements are clear and well heard when it comes to high risk posed by AI embedded in autonomous weapons. Can you please tell us more about those red lines?
Right. So I would say there are two aspects to consider, and one is regarding lethal autonomous weapons and so-called killer robots, which has nothing to do with movie things, but actual military issues. There's a moral aspect and there's a security aspect. So the moral aspect is simply, and I'm going to quote the UN Secretary General, the prospect of machines with the discretion and power to take human lives is morally repugnant. And he also says in the same sentence, and could trigger new arms races. And that's the security aspect. Right? So it's morally repugnant because those machines simply do not and will not, for the foreseeable future, understand the moral circumstances. Right? You don't. There may be things that the machine doesn't really understand, and then those decisions should be taken by humans. So that's just a moral aspect. But there's a security aspect, which I think all of us should be concerned about. If those weapons become easy to buy because many companies build them, think about especially the drones that are equipped with face detection and weapons, then you can have targeted killing of particular sectors of the population, say CEOs or researchers, just to give an example. And like Patrice and I wouldn't want that. But I think all of us should be questioning this future. And a lot of countries already are raising the alarm. 28 countries are behind a movement to create an international treaty. The EU just last summer, a massive proportion of the Parliament voted in favor of a motion to work towards such a treaty. There will be countries, probably like the US and Russia, which will not want to embark in this thing, but it should not stop us from doing it. Think about the Montreal Treaty on Landmines, which happened, I think, in 1997. The US never signed it, but it worked. So the vast majority of countries signed this. Oh, by the way, over 60% of people around the world are in favor of such a treaty. And so what happens is, as we talk more about these things, and if we sign international treaties, the moral stake increases, and the moral stigma of building those weapons, which are going to be considered repugnant, is going to be such that companies which build weapons will not want to be associated with that. And that's what happened with landmines. So today, there are no companies building landmines anymore, except in South Korea for a very special reason.
Or potentially the US, but Thales doesn't
no,
anymore.
The American companies are not building landmines anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
So France has signed actually the treaty back in the 80s or 90s, I think, and Thales supplies actually those rules, those laws, those regulations. Sorry. So as part of Thales, we're all human, citizen, fathers, mothers, sisters, and so we are citizens of that planet. Thales has a responsibility actually to address that, not only actually for the rest of the world, but also for our people. This is a very serious topic. Patrice, can you tell us more actually what Thales is doing in that area?
Yeah. Just a quick word to complement what Joshua said. First, I fully agree, and I would say it's money time. Now it's also time to take decision because it has been discussed for too long, to be honest. It's not that difficult to say no to killer robots. It's not that difficult to say, okay, we sign a treaty. Let's start with 2 countries, 3 countries, 4 countries. And then, as in the example you've just taken, it will embark, I would say, the international community. And as Thales, clearly, we have decided to set clear red lines on this topic. So coming to your point, internally, what we are doing, to be a bit more precise, we are currently working on a charter on ethics related to more globally digital transformation, not only AI, in particular AI, but not only, and to draw these red lines the company will follow. It's a self-regulation that we will apply to us, be it for military or civil application. We have spoken about military application, but I think we have also moral and ethical questions on civilian domains. It is expected, by the way, by some, if not all, our employees. It is also expected by what we call our stakeholders, customers, shareholders, and myself. So we are working on this charter along 3 topics: trust, vigilance, and governance. Trust, I've already said a little bit about trust. Vigilance, so what are the ethical impact, typically, of the use of AI in our solution? So we need to be vigilant. It starts with vigilance or awareness, and governance, enabling ethics to be at the front and at the center in what we do. The question would be how we will share this charter. Will it be an internal tool, an internal asset of the company, or something on which we'll communicate broadly? It's too soon to say. But first, we are putting in place this important set of guidelines.
Sounds like a great initiative. Following up on the ethics, you played a role, central role actually, in the Montreal declarations on responsible AI. It's been a series of consultations, not only here in Montreal, in Canada, and elsewhere as well. What can be done further? Because there's a lot of initiatives. Let's be frank. Around the world, there's a lot of initiatives actually, and that's good. That make it vibrant. But what's next?
Well, what's missing in the line of what Patrice was talking about is more international coordination. So it's great to have these scholars working with the public to create something like the Montreal Declaration, which is a statement of principles. But there are many steps before this changes, society in the right way. So one is it has to be an international effort. And there's work in that direction, as you probably know, with France and Canada, discussing about an international observatory. And those efforts, there might be several. It's okay, because it's not a competition here. It's about finding the right legal and social norms to manage this wisdom that we need to build up about AI and about technology and governance that gets eventually translated into actual laws and regulations. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to go from these principles to new laws in many, many countries and potentially in international treaties.
Okay. So we've been talking about AI as a general term. We haven't tried actually to define what's AI, and I don't want to go down this path. But let's go underneath the hood. Data. There's a lot of concern about data protections and the misuses of data. Will AI just increase that challenge or that issue? Or on the contrary, will AI support and help protect better people, industry, you name it, when it comes to data?
I wouldn't wait for technology to save us. I think it's more a matter of social organization. So, for example, things like data trusts, meaning that we have third parties between the producers of data, that may be people, and companies that are using the data and making money out of it, that can better protect the interest of people. So these are just social constructions, like banks, insurance companies, and so on, and economic constructions as well. So that's I would do that, and of course we should do research to maybe do better in terms of encryption and things like that. But I wouldn't put my money on that.
Patrice, on the question of data, we certainly have a policy in Thales, but is the strategy that we have, to digitize the company and go through the digital transformation, reflecting data protection, and are we putting all the tools actually that are required to ensure that it will be preserved?
Yeah. But definitely, it's an important stake within this frame of digital transformation, be it for ourselves or when we serve our customers. We apply very strict internal policy in terms of protecting data protection, sometimes even more rigorous than existing laws or regulation. Clearly, it's of the utmost importance because most of the time, data fuels AI. I've spoken about algorithm, unconscious bias, diversity. The same applies to data. So we not only need to protect the data, we also need to make sure or to guarantee the quality of the data, the integrity of the data, again, if we want to come up with, I would say, something which works, which makes sense, which is pertinent for ourselves or for our customers. Again, easy to say, much more difficult to do. But I think, by the way, that the acquisition of Gemalto will help us in this domain because they have a set of technologies which are really fascinating in this overall field of data protection.
Maybe final questions. We have 1 minute left, so I will harass you till the end. Questions on the jobs. Will AI lead to millions of jobs being lost, or is a way actually forward in terms of deploying AI?
So the question of jobs, I think, is the #1 item under the trusts category as far as governments are thinking about AI. Because if we continue on the path of automation without doing something to prepare for that, without maybe changing the way that wealth is redistributed, and changing the way that people go through the periods where they are jobless, people are going to lose trust in technology. And so I was at a G7 meeting about AI last spring, and 6 of the 7 agreed that this was important. Otherwise, there will be a backlash against technology. So governments have to really seriously consider their social net and safety net, and think within the next 10 years, which is not that much. People are going to be at the end of their career, and maybe even in the middle of their career and losing their jobs. How do we deal with that? How do we change the education system to better deal with that? How do we make sure that everyone benefits from AI and not just lucky ones like myself?
Patrice, on AI and the impact on the employment, you want to say a few words? What's going on within Thales?
Well, you have as many opinions as speakers when you raise this question, with very negative or very positive views on AI, or more globally, as you said, technology. Will technology help or not in terms of jobs? So I'm just looking at Thales to stay humble on this question. I think it's a great opportunity for us to invent what I call tomorrow's job. And for that, we invest a lot in our teams, workforce, to prepare them to the best as we can to master these technologies in the future. We also invest by hiring new talents, by the way. Probably, I would say 50% of our workforce will be affected, not saying it's positive or negative, but affected by these new technologies and AI in particular. So our duty, again, to bring trust or to create trust, is to take every possible actions to make sure that the ones who will be affected are taken care of as of today, in terms of how do we reskill people, how do we upskill people, to make sure that, yes, they will be able to continue to contribute to Thales on the long run. So in very concrete terms, we define the skills and competence that will be needed today and tomorrow. We compare this level of competence or set of competence to the current situation, the current level of such competences within the group, and then we put in place some training programs that we try most of the time to co-construct with our employees.
Good. That concludes that first phase of questions. I'll turn the mic over to the audience, and I'll ask Ken Darby, head of North American Communications, to assist and take the MC role.
So with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Hi, Henry Canaday with Aviation Week. Boeing has just announced it's developed a test vehicle for autonomous urban flight, which is an application of AI. Are you all involved in any of that autonomous flight research or development?
I'm going to give a global answer because most of our customers do not want us to be mentioned, so I let them communicate, but the answer is yes. Yes, we are involved in a certain number of demonstrators or proof of concept in these aerial autonomous vehicle projects. It is a fascinating area. Now, the question you may raise is how long will it take to come to, I would say, reality? I mean, in terms of application in the real world. It's not only a technological question, it's also a question linked to regulation and certification. Again, as this aviation world is highly impacted by certification and regulation. So it's not only a question of technological maturity, but also how long will it take for certification bodies to authorize such autonomous vehicles to fly.
Hi, Seth Miller from PaxX.Air. I'm going back a little bit to some of the conversation you had about regulated or certified AI and some of the challenges about the data, the bias, all of those things. Given that this is a market where sort of everybody can do it, is just the Thales committing to having some sort of focus on making it ethical? Is that enough? Is there a way to sort of get past it just being one company? You said you're going to have a charter of intent or charter of ethics, but you might keep it secret. So how are you going to influence the market and make sure that we get to something that actually doesn't involve, those drones coming and killing you guys?
Nice question, thank you. Perhaps a short and global answer. We will not succeed on our own. In particular, in this digital world, we are totally convinced that we will win with ecosystem. Or we will win or will progress with as many stakeholders, contributors as possible. So it's a key question for us. That's why we have started to think about explainable AI and then certifiable AI. But definitely, we will not work on our own to find the solution. By the way, certificable AI is a long shot. Let's be honest, it's not for tomorrow. No, but we need to start now.
There are things that can be done already now. So people are working on standards, for example, to describe data sets in ways that make it easier to verify that there's not too much bias, or at least we can track it, and make it easier for certification later. So there are standards body, international standards body, that are already starting to work on these questions, and I think we should encourage these kinds of efforts.
Oui, bonjour, Michel Cabirol, La Tribune. Vous avez dit que l'intelligence artificielle, on était au début, et donc, est-ce que c'est pas un enjeu de trouver des traités internationaux, alors que on ne sait pas, et vous l'avez dit, que l'intelligence artificielle, ce qu'elle sera dans 5-15 ans. Donc trouver des normes, trouver des certifications aujourd'hui, elles vont forcément évoluer. Est-ce que ce n'est pas un enjeu de réglementation et certification vraiment sur la durée de ce que pourra être l'intelligence artificielle?
Il faudra toujours qu'il y ait une veille, mais on ne va pas attendre la catastrophe avant de faire des standards et des règlements. So we can't afford to wait for bad things to happen. Bad things will happen, but we can minimize them by thinking about what technology, because what technology can do now already is potentially problematic. And so we have to start acting now.
Moraguez from France Usine Nouvelle. You said a lot of was coming on in research, Mr. Bengio, for AI. Could you tell us what would be the major achievements which are which are in the labs to come?
So as I said, currently AI is good at some things, but it's very far from human level intelligence. And there are many missing pieces that are being explored across the world, and we don't know really how much time it's going to take before we solve these problems. So I mentioned the problem of high level cognition versus sort of perception. So currently we're doing very good at perception, and we're starting to do reasonably well at action, but really not anywhere near even like your cat. So the connection between action and perception needs to be improved, and also the ability to understand language. So right now we have systems that seem to do reasonably well until they fail, and you realize that they really didn't understand. They were doing their work in a very superficial way. So if you look at the mistakes of machine translation systems, which have improved a lot, amazing. But when you look at their mistakes, you see they don't actually understand the sentences. So the whole aspect of understanding how our world works, like common sense, is still an open question. And it's probably going to take many years, if not decades, before we crack that. Absolutely with machine learning. There's no other way. But it's what we have now in terms of machine learning needs to be augmented. And it may need to take inspiration from other areas of AI or outside AI. For example, I care a lot about taking inspiration from human intelligence, from biology, from cognitive science, from classical AI. So there are many areas which will come to help guide our future progress.
Vous avez parlé de la course entre la prise de conscience politique et la technologie. Est-ce que vous perdez vous partez perdant. Moi, j'ai eu la chance d'être en 98 à Kyoto pour le sommet sur le climat. Quand on est sorti à Kyoto, on s'est dit « Waouh, ça y est, on y est arrivé ». 30 ans plus tard, le plus grand pays du monde sort de l'accord et peu de choses ont été faites. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez mettre en balance les progrès que vous attendez de l'intelligence artificielle avec une organisation politique qui sera forcément chaotique et déficiente?
Ben, ce que j'espère, c'est que les dangers auxquels on fait face vont nous forcer à trouver des solutions collectives qui sont nécessaires pour y faire face. So, it's not a question of whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. We have to find solutions to our global problems, whether it's climate change or it's, AI impact. And it's not by only focusing on, the bad things that can happen, but that's a motivation. But we have to really work hard to solve those problems. So we can use the threat as a motivation, but we have to be working positively on solutions. That's the way I think about it.
Perhaps we could take a very simple and basic example. Bad things that have happened in the cyberspace has forced people to move on this topic. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it was still seen as nice to have, or even in some cases seen as a kind of a management distraction. I think now every serious, I would say, institutions, bodies, companies take it very seriously because of what bad things have already happened in this domain. So it's a basic example, but it shows that, yes, as you said, Joshua, threats will help, unfortunately, to force people to improve, to move forward on this topic.
Vous avez dit qu'il y avait l'aspect moral et l'aspect sécuritaire dans les armes létales et que l'aspect moral ne pouvait pas être le territoire de l'intelligence artificielle, si j'ai bien compris.
Oui, pas pour l'instant, pas pour le futur prévisible.
Et pourquoi est-ce que ce ne serait pas finalement, si les chercheurs comme vous allaient jusque la morale, est-ce que ce ne serait pas une façon d'objectiver les systèmes de valeurs qui sont les nôtres par des algorithmes?
Tout à fait. Il y a des projets de recherche. There are research projects, and I'm interested in these things, to bring moral understanding into machines. But it might take decades or centuries. I have no clue. It's very hard. So in the meantime, we can't assume that those machines have moral understanding, and that is exactly the main reason why we need to have humans being part of the decision process when moral questions are at stake.
Bonjour, Hakim Gasmi de la Radio France Culture à Paris. Une question éthique et morale. Avec la montée des populismes et la course à leur moment aujourd'hui, est-ce que vous ne craignez pas que l'intelligence artificielle puisse tomber entre de mauvaises mains dans les prochaines années?
C'est exactement la crainte que j'ai essayé d'exprimer. Je ne pense pas qu'il faut paniquer dans le sens que c'est pas demain matin que ce genre de scénario puisse arriver, mais sur une perspective de 10 ans, oui, l'intelligence artificielle dans de mauvaises mains, c'est un problème. De mauvaises mains, c'est pas nécessairement pour l'instant quelqu'un dans la rue, là, mais pour l'instant, c'est de mauvaises mains, ça peut être des compagnies ou des pays qui l'utilisent à mauvais escient. Oh, sorry. And just saying, I don't think there's any short-term danger of people in the street being able to use AI in various ways. Right now, it's more like big organizations that can do that. But we have to think ahead about that possibility in the next decades.
Thanks very much. Vago Muradian from Defense and Aerospace Report. Throughout history, there have been game-changing technologies that, despite international convention or international concerns, whether it was like the crossbow, the nuclear weapon, the submarine, aerial bombardment, I mean, the list goes on and on. There have been conventions, alarm, and at the end of the day, somebody weaponizes that.
Yeah.
And there are adversaries in a great power competition that don't really care about some of the moral conventions. I was talking to a friend of mine in the Pentagon about man-machine interface, and he said, well, we're very squeamish about it, but we know that there are other people who are experimenting with exactly man-machine interface in a way that we might not be comfortable with. How do you work this in an international community, whether it's Russia or China, potentially views some of these things very, very differently than, for example, a France, a Germany, a United States would, where the moral question and the technological are working in parallel, as opposed to this will give me an enormous military advantage at a time when I can employ it at a time and place of my choosing, potentially ahead of whatever my adversary might be considering.
So that's a very good question. It's connected to the wisdom race that I was talking about. But I will add one more element to this, which is nothing prevents, say, a country like the US or France from taking advantage of AI to build defensive weapons that could protect us against, say, nefarious uses, immoral uses of AI in weaponry. Right? So one thing is to build weapons that we consider immoral, and the other thing is to build defenses against that, which are not going to be aiming at people, but aiming at these weapons. Right? So that's one practical aspect. The bigger picture, of course, is we need to make the use of these immoral technologies viewed as immoral by most countries and most people around the earth to minimize those possibilities, even if we can't completely eliminate them. And for that, we need better international coordination. We need a stronger institutions, whether it's the UN or something else, to basically create world peace, because that's the only way we're going to solve this problem at the end.
Jean-Marc Tanguy, Magazine Red, j'ai une question basique. Est-ce qu'il y a une spécificité à l'intelligence artificielle travaillée ici, au Canada? Et qu'est-ce qu'elle apporte au groupe Thales, très concrètement, par rapport à ce qui est travaillé à Saclay, par exemple?
I don't think that there is something specific to what we do here compared to Saclay. The fact that the two ecosystems are different brings another source of richness. So it's not really because we are working on technology A in Saclay or technology B in Montreal. For me, what counts more is the ecosystem with different people, different views, different perspectives. Again, it comes to diversity. That is important for us moving forward on AI.
Another question from the floor.
Yes, please. Maybe first en français. Un premier enjeu pourrait être dans la régulation les technologies de reconnaissance faciale.
Facial recognition, qui se développe très fortement, que Thales utilise dans ses solutions. Certains appellent à carrément les interdire, sinon même avant même de les réguler, vu leur essor actuel. Qu'en pensez-vous, Monsieur Bengio et Monsieur Caine, comment réguler ces technos?
So, I think it's maybe early to say let's ban completely facial recognition, because there are lots of very useful applications. But it does make sense to ban some uses. Right? And we have to go in steps here and you see how things go, right? So let's even have regulation about nefarious uses of face recognition. For example, one thing we didn't talk about, we talked a lot about killer robots, which uses face recognition, but sort of big brother scenarios where organizations, countries are watching their people in a way that's abusive and dangerous for democracy, or at least the possibility that we end up with authoritarian states that can't be dislodged because they have so much power and control. So I think we have to go through steps. But it's going to be very hard to completely ban the technology itself. It's very easy to build right now. But we have to at least start with what we consider applications that are, immoral.
We will take one more question.
Just to complement what you said, quite consistent, by the way, I don't think we should ban. We should regulate these technologies. By the way, other countries will use them, so we need to stay, I would say, in the race, in the game, to understand what can we do with these technologies, how fast they progress. And again, we can use it to defend, to protect, instead of any kind of abusive, as you said, usage. Imagine that with such technology, we could avoid terrorist attack. Would you ban them? Would you think that the use of the technology is a bad thing? Personally, I don't think so. So it's the use case on which you need to be extremely vigilant and rigorous. But banning the technology itself, for me, it's not a solution.
We will take one more question before we go to the video, so we have time for one more question.
Bonjour, Vincent Namijon, Magazine Challenge à Paris. Il y a 3 ans, l'US Air Force avait fait un test en grandeur réelle sur simulateur, donc d'un essaim d'avion de combat dirigé par une intelligence artificielle, qui était d'ailleurs de puissance assez limitée, contre un essaim dirigé par un vétéran de l'US Air Force, un pilote chevronné. Sur plusieurs jours, je crois qu'il n'avait pas réussi à descendre un seul avion. Est-ce que la conclusion, c'est pas que même avec l'IA dont M. Bengio vous parlait, en disant qu'elle était relativement parfois un peu stupide, parfois un peu limitée, il y a déjà des dangers extrêmement forts en termes de défense, en termes d'armement, avec des IA, même de puissance limitée?
Tout à fait. As I said earlier, we don't need to wait for super intelligence or approaching human level intelligence for current technology to be both very useful and very dangerous. So yeah, it's now that we need to start regulating and finding, where the red lines should be for each particular field.
How can artificial intelligence help in the health industry?
So the health industry is one of the most interesting areas of growth for applications of AI. And by the way, it's connected to the question of trust that we were discussing earlier, because people will, see the advantage of technology if it makes them in better health and helps them, for example, reduce cancers. This is an area where I've been involved in medical imaging. It's probably the area where the growth is the faster. But as countries and other organizations are doing gradually a better job of aggregating medical data together, the potential for even more applications of AI in medicine is huge. I think it could completely change the way that medical services are provided. Treatment are going to be personalized depending on your history, your genes, and so on.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we do have a video, and we've been graced with His Excellency, Mr. Omar Sultan Al-Alama. He is the Minister of Science for Artificial Intelligence in the United Arab Emirates. Accepted take this opportunity to participate in the second Thales Media Days in an address that he will give to us now in a few words.
Hello, it's an absolute pleasure addressing you all today in the Thales Media Day, talking about AI in decisive moments. Artificial intelligence, as many of the experts that are with you today are going to mention, is a technology that is going to bring exponential change. It's going to shape the future and transform our lives. This technology is a technology that brings a lot of promise, but if used in the wrong ways, brings a lot of peril as well. My role as the first Minister of State of Artificial Intelligence globally is to work on setting the agenda for governments when it comes to dealing with this technology, whether it be understanding how to govern this technology or pushing innovation to the next level, and also deploying artificial intelligence on the field in ways that are ethically and morally correct for individuals everywhere on Earth. We hope in the UAE to be a role model for other countries, and we hope that we can start a dialogue that everyone else is going to be a part of. We want to ensure that the discussion on artificial intelligence is one that involves every country and every single citizen globally. Ethics is a very important pillar when it comes to artificial intelligence. And to many, as it is to me, it is the foundation of this technology that we need to build it upon. If we look at every kind of development that humanity has gone through, whether it's industrial development, urban development, and others, if they were done in a way that is irresponsible or does not take into consideration the importance of building a better future of humans globally, we get challenges that we all as a collective humanity need to overcome. These challenges come in the shape of climate change that today every single person on Earth needs to try to address for us to ensure that we have a better future on this planet. Let's ensure that we work together. Let's build AI that is responsible, that is ethical, and that is developed for creating a better future. Thank you very much, and I hope that these discussions that you have today come with a fruitful outcome that impacts everyone's lives, whether it's in the UAE or in Canada and globally, positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Yoshua. Thank you.